Welcome, everybody. It's a very intimate group, very small. We appreciate that. We are talking about lessons that we learned while developing an educational cat game. We have many fun images, so hopefully this won't be too boring, and it's a little bit of information. Thank you.
Cool. So we are from GOAR. Just to give a bit of information about GOAR, we are a games for good company, where the games that we make, we drive to make an impact positively onto the world. A couple of our taglines that we use, the future is playable, and then games that inspire your community to take action and feel connection to something bigger.
There you go.
Oh, wait, hold on, sorry. One.
No, that's right.
I was going to say, that's our QR code for our link, if anyone would like to follow us. Cool. So, I am Carol Taka. I am the Digital Cultural Advisor at GOAR Games. I'm also a producer. That's my email.
I'm Tosh. I am primarily UX UI, but I have many hats in the company and do lots of things. I have had the most to do with this particular project, so if you guys do have questions at the end, I will probably be answering them.
Cool. So, who owns a cat in this room?
Does anyone own a cat?
Sorry, does a cat own you? Who loves cats?
Oh, that's good to see.
And then, who has played a cat-themed game?
Fantastic.
No, it's good to see a lot of people that love cats in this room. And what we'll be talking about today is what we learned from developing this game, not only about cats, but about developing educational games. Cool. So for today, we'll be focusing on three main topics. The topic selection, script writing, and the legal decisions. And we have a nice trailer of the game.
If someone can click that for us,
Please. And that's also a QR code to play the game. So feel free to
if
say
you
that.
want to scan and play while you... I didn't put it on autoplay. Technical difficulties. There we go.
Cat Angel's Triumph is taking the cat-loving community by storm. This free educational game teaches players vital knowledge in an engaging way that saves cats' lives.
My first reaction when I started playing the game was, this is really interesting, this is new to me.
It was developed in collaboration with the founder of the New Zealand Cat Foundation, Anne Bentley Burton.
I'm a perfect choice to give advice on the sort of things that are happening out there on the streets and in real life.
And veterinary advisor Elsa Flint.
I think the take-home message from the game, probably the most important ones, are about vaccinating cats, microchipping them, and desexing them.
The game puts you in real-life situations where your decisions can mean the difference between a cat ending up in a bad situation and a cat that is safe and happy.
I like it. It's very cute, it's fun, and it also tugs on the heartstrings a bit.
But this game is more than just fun. It's a mission to create a brighter future for cats by educating and empowering cat owners.
I think a game like this will help with animal welfare because gamifying these kind of topics really help educating the youth.
If you would like to get your paws on this game, you can play it for free by visiting catangelstriumph.com.
Yay!
Nope. Sorry.
What?
Hold on. Oh, there. Okay, cool.
There's no keyboard.
It's just this. That's fine. Cool. So, Cat Angel's Triumph was made for the New Zealand Cat Foundation. It was designed to help teach about the legalization that the legislation to mandate microchipping that was about to come in to law. It was to inform the public. What we did was we started off with an augmented reality cat game based on other games that we had made to kind of make a fast game to get the information out there to the public. What we realized was there wasn't enough information in that, so we pivoted and made a 3D cat microchipping game where it was open world. You would go trap microchip cats before the
I gotta remember the name now.
cat catchers come and get them. But then we figured out that this was too much. It would take too long and it wouldn't give us enough time to get it out. So what we did in the end was we did a visual novel style game. So it was digestible, easy to build, as it was based on previous games that we had made. And yeah, that's how we got to Cat Angels Triumph.
Now it's my turn. So I'm going to take you through how we decided what we actually wanted to teach. Primarily the easy topics that we could cover, some of the more controversial and difficult topics, and then the decision framework that we ended up getting in the end. But I will wrap that all up into one of our stories, if you do want to play. Spoilers alert. The very first story that we started was Search for Apollo, where we primarily focused on microchipping because that is a very easy win topic. Everyone can agree that microchipping your pet is a good idea. So we have Apollo and Sydney. Sydney loves her cat. She would never want anything bad to happen to her cat. So you would think she would microchip her cat, right? No. She did not microchip her cat. That is not something that she thought about when getting this cat, which actually is quite common. Some people don't think about actually microchipping their cat. So the story follows Apollo and Sydney, and Apollo gets lost. And what happens when cats get lost is sometimes people out in the community can find that cat, and if the cat doesn't have a microchip, it's very hard to actually find their owners. So we're trying to reinforce that microchipping your cat is the easiest way to find that cat and to get the information out there. We also learned that there's a couple of different ways that you can get your cat back if they do get out, such as putting out objects with familiar scents like beds or blankets, or even a used litter box. Apparently that's a really great way of getting your cat back. And obviously very stinky food. Some of the more difficult topics that we wanted to cover fell under a story called Paws Off My Garden. This is about Riley and his garden. He really likes his garden, and he does not like the neighborhood cats who come into his garden. We wanted to have a way to teach people how to, what's the word?
Deal?
Yeah, deal with cats and keep them away from your yard or your garden without being very mean to them. Although we did want to include a couple different options for players so that they could safely explore those kinds of options, those environments, without actually getting into trouble. So in the initial scenario, we were given 3 options. A bit of a diplomatic option, you go talk to your neighbors, see whose cat they actually belong to. A more community-focused option, where you talk to a local rescue and you get advice from them, or a very aggressive option, which did end up having a few controversial choices that we decided to include so that we could cover the very harsh consequences that happen if you were to take those options. So the controversial options that we ended up coming to was poisoning cats, shooting cats, or just making loud noises. We didn't want to actually encourage people to use these, so we ended up having to change some of the script to just say poison instead of actually saying what could be used, because obviously we don't want to encourage people to do that. And the end of those scenarios always came out to a very harsh consequences with some information about why it's terrible to do those things. Those stories helped us come up with really good guidelines to do some of our more complicated stories that ended up happening. That is the topic we're picking actually useful? Is it age appropriate for our target audience? And does it actually teach empathy? It also helped us to avoid some of the pitfalls that you might fall into when you're covering some of these kinds of difficult topics, which is to teach way too much information and overload the player, but also teaching the wrong thing at the wrong time. And then we're gonna move on to script writing, which is also me. I did a lot of the script writing for this game, although I am not a script writer, so hopefully the games are good. Now, when it comes to the script writing of the stories, you'd think that we can just ask experts what the best way to do things are, but in reality, some experts have different opinions to other experts. So we had to pick and choose what we included and try to find a middle ground for everyone. And to do that, I'm also going to wrap that up into one of our stories called Limitless Choices and Limited Shelter. This is Jesse. Jesse found 3 little stray kittens on his property, and we had to figure out how to deal with these kittens. And to deal with these kittens, we gave players 3 main methods, which gave us a little bit of trouble with our experts. So the first method was to talk to our neighbor and find out what they might say. And one thing that we thought to include was the discussion around glue traps, as this is something that I believe the shelter had run into before they were made illegal in New Zealand, where people were putting the glue traps out and they would catch things they weren't supposed to, because unfortunately, glue traps are very unbiased. They will catch everything and anything, does not matter. If you put it out for rats, it will catch cats. But in the discussion with the shelters and the vets, we did have to come to a consensus around what kind of terminology we wanted to use. So in New Zealand specifically, glue traps are illegal, and we started our script with that wording, but through our research and through our consultations, we discovered it's not illegal all over the world. So we decided to go with the word inhumane instead, to try and emphasize that that's probably not the best thing to do. Because as I said, it is unbiased. It catches everything. Look how cute that face is. Our second method was to bring the kittens inside and try and figure out what to do with them then. But that came with how we were going to talk about setting up cat traps. And through our discussions with both the shelter and the vet, we discovered that the kind of language that we have to use for setting up traps has to be very precise, very specific. We made sure that all of the dialogue related to trap setting highlighted what's the most important with those kinds of things, because we didn't want to give the wrong advice, and we wanted to make sure that we were satisfying our shelter and their advice. We also made sure that any kind of very important topics or language was also accompanied with visually stimulating mini games that were also interactive. And to reinforce the trap requirements while also being in the form of this visual novel style game, we would put the options of how you had to set up the trap in a very specific order so that they would go through and click the right order to be able to set up the trap properly. If they click the wrong option, it would tell them why it's wrong, and then go back to those 3 options until they went through the specific order. The third method we showed was building a very elaborate catio outdoors for all of the stray cats who wanted to come in. And that actually brought a very interesting conversation around indoor cats versus outdoor cats. This is where a lot of our experts really clashed with their opinions. So we had to really find a middle ground because I don't know if any of you have talked to vets or shelters or even just cat enthusiasts, but they all have different opinions. Vets tend to recommend having your cat be an indoor-only cat because it's the safest for them. It'll promote better health, things like that. Shelters tend to go with a more managed outdoor experience, so primarily indoor, but having the ability to go outside, maybe on a leash or in a little cat shelter area. Whereas a lot of cat experts think that cats should have full freedom, bodily autonomy, all that kind of things. Some people really don't care where their cats go. In order to find a middle ground with all of these different people, we decided to, one, add a little cat flap into our in-game catio so that the cats in the catio weren't trapped there. They could come and go as they pleased. Then we asked our shelter what would be best for the types of things we should recommend to go into these catios, which is obviously food, water, fresh, every day, a few toys, some scratching posts. And we also asked our vet what they would recommend to go into a cat shelter as well, which was bedding, cooling mats, heating mats, covered shelter within the shelter so that the cats were protected from weather. And each object would be appearing in the game one by one with a little description on why it was added and why it's important to keep. To summarize script writing as a whole, we wouldn't be able to do these stories without collaboration with experts, extensive collaboration. A lot of us were going back and forth on the script writing many weeks, but it does show in the kind of language that we were using, especially for any of the critical content, like how to set up the traps, using this very specific language that the vets and the shelters recommended, and then also reaching a consensus and finding an agreement among those experts to really have everyone agree that this game is good.
Cool. We're going to talk about legal decisions now. So in this section, we will talk legal decisions. We worked closely with our in-house legal team to make sure that our content is accurate and safe for an international audience. So we'll start off with, I'll also be doing Juice's story. What's the story's name again? I forgot.
Choices for 5 Lives.
Choices for 5 Lives, sorry. So Juice is a cat that you as a player have just adopted from your grandmother. They have spent their entire lives indoors, and it's been months now. She has been an indoor cat now at your house. It is months later, and she is now sick at home with some strange symptoms. So what we were looking at with this is when recommending for players for how to care for cats, whether they be young kittens or older cats, there are a lot of pros and cons that differed across both New Zealand audiences and international audiences. We wanted to make sure that we were spreading information that helps more cats. So telling people that if their cats are sick, to take them to the vet, or getting them to know how to tell if your cat's in pain and what actions to take. And people aren't that knowledgeable with cats and want to learn more, and so we just wanted to teach that general knowledge. And yeah. So when playing the game, you can either take Juice to the vet or you can stay at home and kind of ignore her, because as we said, she's only displaying strange symptoms, not anything that you would find super overly concerning. You can go to the vet and get advice on what's going on, or if you stay at home, some stuff can happen. So when recommending to people what to do, the cons are we are not professionals. This is a game, and the way that people will take the advice that we give them is up to them. We can write them any way that we want. We can give them all the facts around it, but making sure that people read entire statements, go through the entire storylines, because it is a tree. We just cannot predict how they're going to take that information. So, Juice was pregnant. If you go to the vet will tell you, and you'll go through a very nice storyline when you kind of find out what you do with that. If you do not, you stay at home, some really bad stuff can happen because she is an older cat that you have gotten from your grandmother, and kind of what can happen around that. So with this, we had a lot of liability and risk management around giving advice to people, especially because we wanted this to be for an international audience. So in the game, the vet gives advice based on what our New Zealand vet has advised us on. We went back and forth a lot with whose information we should go with, and we decided that being told by a vet that this is what you should do in game, and us telling you to take your cat to a vet and not just listen to us, was a big part of our liability and risk management. In New Zealand, after Juice has given birth, no matter which storyline, there was a big discussion around when to de-sex your kittens. And inside New Zealand, it is recommended that you de-sex them within at 6 months or older after they hit a certain weight, but outside of New Zealand, it is at 4 months, no matter what, in some places. And so these are quite different opinions, and this is kind of one of the bigger ones where bad things can happen either way, and it's just kind of knowing your risks around it. The next bit is, so in the bad storyline, if Juice does not go to the vet, we wanted to make sure that we showed the bad things that happened. So if Georgie, the player, decided not to take Juice to the vet, there is a chance that her and all the kittens will die. And this is the first iteration we did for showing that. And we were like, that is way too graphic. So we immediately were like, nope, can't do that. And so just to get that off the screen so you guys don't have to keep seeing that, we instead kind of inferred it, because cats like to go into deep, dark places to kind of pass away if they're in pain or stress. So we showed it very gently, just underground, looking like they're sleeping. Same with the kitten. So just to get off that page a bit. So we did want these very hard-hitting storylines that showed what can and can't happen when you don't do right by your cats. We had a really long discussion about what age we wanted the limit to be, and we ended up doing 13 plus because it's, I think it was based on the movies, like 13 plus statement, but it is not a movie's 13 plus statement because that you're not allowed to do legally without it being given by a certain authority. So we just said age limit is 13 plus. So cats can still die kind of throughout the game, and we kind of found that kids under the age of 13 would get quite upset by it. There's also a lot of information that we provide after the story, giving facts and things that you can do, and so we wanted to make sure that the age could also understand these. After all the stories, we wanted to make sure that people had a little summary of what they've just done. And so at the end, you either get 1 heart, 2 hearts, or 3 hearts, depending on which storyline you went down. And this kind of gave information about what you did. This was more fact-based than in the game because the vet wanted to make sure, and the New Zealand Cat Foundation wanted to make sure that we had a lot of information kind of in there, so people who just were kind of already within that ecosystem could go look through these and find out more information. Thank you very much for being here.
We're actually way ahead of time.
Way ahead of time. That was way shorter.
We had a lot of information in our first draft, and we thought this was going to take a lot longer. So please ask questions.
Yeah.
Why is my food bowl empty?
Questions relevant to the presentation, I should clarify.
Yeah. Oh.
Hello. I'm wondering how many, roughly how many vets you guys spoke to? Was it one franchise of vet that you guys spoke to for research about this? And how long did you spend actually?
It was primarily one vet who consulted us with the script writing portion. And then when we sent the game out, with, I think it was 1 or 2 stories, we released the initial game. We sent them out to vet clinics around Auckland, I believe, and had overwhelmingly positive feedback from all of the vets that we did send the game to.
I love this stuff, and I think that you've tackled some of this already when you were discussing the controversy of indoor and outdoor cats, but I wanted to ask if there was at any point where you guys had to have the conversations about is conservation a part of this, or are you going to completely leave that out?
That was, what was the story with that? We had a discussion about that, but because of the client that we were working with, we couldn't lean very hard into the whole don't let your cats outdoor because it's bad for the environment. Although that was the compromise with the catio, is to say, having an indoor-outdoor cat where the outdoor portion is the catio is better in terms of health and safety than just letting your cat run free, especially for all of the hazards that you could run into with those kinds of cats.
Can I jump in for a second? So I was a part of the first 2 game ideas more than I was part of the third. And that conversation came up very early on. And at that point, we were working mostly with the New Zealand Cat Foundation. And they shared a lot of facts around cats, because there was a study done in New Zealand about that. And it's the difference between pet cats, feral cats, and then wild cats. And so feral cats, which are those kind of stray cats that are in the city, are found to not really have as much effect on New Zealand wildlife, because they kind of get their food and everything from the cities, which most wildlife that is native to New Zealand isn't really there. It's more the wild cats that affect that, and we didn't really touch on that in our game, but there was a very large conversation around what we do and don't want. Part of the first iteration that we did is the AR kind of world was a bush, and it was one of the factors that kind of led us to the next game was that kind of idea of not being in a bush, but instead kind of in a city landscape.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is that you sort of in the end have taken, in order to compromise between a lot of different opinions, you've kind of taken a harm reduction approach when you're educating people about cat ownership, which is a really great thing.
Definitely. I should also clarify that we have been hard hit to steer away from the word feral.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Cats are stray or unowned, but they are not feral.
Sorry, thank you.
Hi, I was wondering, what is your plan to distribute a game like this? Would it be in schools for kids? Would it be like a QR code at every vet, like a pet store or government website? What is the plan to get this in front of as many vets as possible?
Our initial plan was to give vet clinics and even cafes, basically anywhere where you would have a period of time where you were sitting down and waiting, give them posters with the QR code, because it is an online game, so you can play it basically wherever you have internet. And then we started making postcards as well, and we gave that out to all of the vet clinics who also gave that out to all of their clients. So it's mainly been through vet clinics that we've gotten most of our players from. We also did a booth about this game last year at GDC, so we got a few players from that as well. But yeah.
Did you consider, when intending this game for international audiences, to localize the game into other languages, as well as if there's a separate localized version for other countries internationally? You can change the advice to be the best and most relevant in those countries, such as you mentioned, desexing the kittens at 4 months, 6 weeks, 6 months maybe?
Yeah, that was one of the considerations that we had thought about. We actually thought about that when we were doing some voiceover work. We thought, if we have all of the voiceover in New Zealand accents, how are people in other countries actually going to connect with the game? Which is why it doesn't have voiceover. But we have looked at potentially having translations for other countries, but because the game is still relatively small, I would say that we're kind of keeping it British English, New Zealand kind of local. But specifically for the advice around desexing kittens, it's actually better to wait till 6 months in terms of health and weight and things like that than a lot of the international, or at least the US-based recommendations. I hope that answered the question. Thanks.
Really? Do you remember any of the outcomes from the marketing testing?
Which outcomes? Which marketing testing?
Yeah, the last one that we did, the marketing testing.
I do remember one fact that we looked at was the amount of people who actually finished a game who started initially was something like 52%, which compared to a lot of other games is incredibly high. So starting the game and getting to an ending, about 50% of people got to, which compared to a lot of like AAA games, especially those on Steam, it's really good. It's really good retention.
And then I guess, yeah. And I guess I just add to that because I've got insider knowledge, is that, so we realized that the social media footage, we did a lot of testing, and we realized that the social media footage that had real cats in it did better, performed better than the animated footage from the game, which was quite interesting. So it seemed to pull on the heartstrings more. But to answer your question, we're still doing marketing testing to figure out which channels work best, and that TikTok requires different content. You know, some of you will say, duh, but TikTok requires different content to Facebook, for instance, completely different audience. And the majority of the players were how old?
Oh, they were like 30 to 40. It was an older audience who kept playing our games.
Audience, not kids.
I think we can release you early. Oh.